Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Hey, we're back with more live from the Heartland. It's for the week of July 22nd, and I'm Michael James, and I'm bringing on someone who is no stranger to the Live from the Heartland show. He's a longtime servant of the people, a people's lawyer from the People's Law Office, the one, the only Michael Deutsch. Michael, how are you doing over there in Evanston?
I'm good. I'm good. Glad to be with you on your show.
Well, it's good to have you. You know, I didn't know that you had retired from the People's Law Office. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why you retired and fill in our newer and younger listeners as to what the People's Law Office does and what it has done?
Okay. I retired about a year ago. I just got fed up with dealing with the courts and trying to get justice from the courts, and decided that I was going to take a break from being a lawyer, at least, fighting in the courts. And the People's Law Office began in 1969. Founders were Dennis Cunningham, Jeff Haas, Don Stang, and Skip Andrew, and Susan Jordan came shortly thereafter. And basically, they began around the representation of Fred Hampton and the Black Panthers and Cha-Cha Jimenez and the Young Lords, and were very active in representing youth and people charged with possession of marijuana and involved in protests. And I joined a year later in 1970. I was a law clerk for a judge in the United States Court of Appeals downtown. And when I was a law clerk, the Chicago conspiracy trial was going on. And I used to sneak down there and watch it, and watch William Kunstler and Leonard Weinglass and Abby Hoffman and all the others. And I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be a people's lawyer, and I want to get involved in representing people who are fighting for justice. So Susan Jordan, who I went to law school with, said, you ought to join us. And after meeting with Dennis, who wowed me with his esoteric views of everything, I joined the People's Law Office and stayed there for the next 52 years.
That's good. Now, you mentioned Dennis Cunningham. So Dennis must have been my lawyer before you started the People's Law Office.
I think so. Yeah.
And you had mentioned to me once that when you were a law clerk, you were working for Otto Kerner. Now, that was before or after he was the governor?
No, it was after he was the governor. He got after the Kerner Commission report, which he says there are two societies, black and white. He was appointed to sit on the United States Court of Appeals. But he really had no experience as a lawyer. He had been a politician all his career. And so he really didn't have a lot of legal skills as a judge. So oftentimes I would wind up writing his opinion, and he would then look it over and basically put a comma here and a capital here. And then he would often pull out a map of Illinois and discuss some part of Illinois that reminded him of the case we were talking about. So, he was still tied up with being the governor of Illinois and not really a judge that should be sitting on the Court of Appeals.
But I met him when I was going to Lake Forest College. And then in 1964, I took a photograph of him in Peoria at the Heart of Illinois Fair. I'll get you a copy of that photo. Okay. So you got involved with the People's Law Office. You'd gone to Northwestern. You grew up in Chicago. You had gone to Senn High School, not too far from where you live now, not too far from where I am right now. You've come on our show before, and I think the last time you were on was talking about a Kurdish man who you were trying to prevent him from being sent back to Turkey by an immigration judge.
His name is Ibrahim Parlak, and he has a restaurant in Union Pier area in Michigan. And for 20 years, he's had this restaurant. People rave about it. He was here, and after 10 years, he said, I'm going to be a U.S. citizen. So he applied for citizenship, and immediately they said he was a terrorist. And that was because Turkey was saying that he was a member of the PKK and therefore was involved in terrorist acts. And therefore they refused him U.S. citizenship, and they began process to send him back to Turkey. And after a lot of struggle, there was a hearing before an immigration judge who found that it was likely if he was sent back to Turkey, he would be tortured. And under the Convention Against Torture, he could not be sent back to Turkey. And therefore, he was protected. But the government appealed the decision to the Board of Immigration Appeals, not a very progressive outfit. And they took 2.5 years to decide his case. And then they decided that they were going to send it back to the immigration judge for more hearings on what the situation was in Turkey for Kurdish people. And right now, it's all pending now before the immigration judge. So that's one of the cases that I'm continuing to consult on and advise, even though I retired from the People's Law Office.
Well, let's talk about, I know one of the things that people at the People's Law Office have been involved with for many years is people wrongfully sent to prison. And you've been involved with a prisoner named Ronnie Carrasquillo.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about him. He's been in jail for 46 years.
Yeah, Ronnie Carrasquillo was a baseball star at Orr High School. And he was 18 years old, and this was in Humboldt Park, and there was a changing neighborhood, and there was a lot of violence against Puerto Ricans who were moving into that neighborhood. And there was this white gang that was attacking young Puerto Rican men. And these men formed a gang called the Gang for Protection, and Ronnie was involved with helping that. And there was a fight on the street at 2 a.m. in the morning between this white gang, the Gaylords, and the Puerto Rican group called, I don't even remember their name, but they were a small gang. And he came out of a party having been kind of drunk. And as they walked down the stairs, a guy had a gun and he was jammed. And he said, my gun is jammed. He gave it to Ronnie. Ronnie said, I can unjam it. They went on the street. There was a melee in the middle of the street. He was 150 feet away. And there was these two groups fighting. And he thought, well, I'm going to shoot over the crowd and break up the fight. And he shot 4 shots, and 3 of them wound up above and beyond where they were fighting in the abandoned YMCA. And 1 bullet went into the crowd, no one understood how, and it hit an off-duty cop that had stopped his car to break up the fight too. And the shot killed him. It hit him in the head and killed him. And so he was on trial for murder, and this was in 1976, okay? And he had a lawyer that didn't really know what he was doing. And he was in front of Frank Wilson, who was a notorious judge at 26th Street. And the trial before Ronnie's was for a mafia hitman. And Frank Wilson acquitted him on a bench trial. And there was a whole big outcry about Frank Wilson was corrupt and how did he acquit this mafia hitman, and there was investigations. And here comes Ronnie Carrasquillo, 18 years old, with the next case. And a courtroom full of cops, and Frank Wilson wanted to rehabilitate his reputation, and he gave him 200 to 600 years. And so Ronnie has been in prison all this time. We've had all this effort to get him out. He's been a model prisoner. Over 46 years, he's had 5 disciplinary shots in his 46 years. He's been trained as a paralegal. He's very religious. He's been very active in organizing other prisoners to get away from the gangs and get an education. And we've been trying. I've been representing him for 22 years, and we still can't get him out of prison. The parole board won't let him out of prison, even though he's totally rehabilitated, because there's a cop involved. And so this was the case I was in court today on, trying to get the appellate court to release him from prison, because there's a part of the Illinois Constitution which is called the proportionate penalty clause, and you're supposed to be sentenced based on the seriousness of your crime and your ability to be rehabilitated. And this judge didn't even consider any of that. He just gave him the 200 to 600. And about 5 years later, Judge Wilson retired, and they were still investigating him, and they convened a grand jury, and he blew his brains out in Arizona rather than go testify in the grand jury. And it came out that he took a $10,000 bribe to acquit the mafia hitman, and then, of course, gave my guy 200 to 600 years. So we've been trying to get him out. We've been in court. The parole board is corrupt. They don't care. He's gotten 7 votes. He needs 8. He needs 8 votes. He's got 7 votes 3 years in a row. And the last year, they revamped the parole board, and all the progressive people were forced out. And this year, he got 1 vote. 1 vote after getting 7 votes 3 years in a row. So what we're saying is that the judge didn't properly sentence him. He violated the disproportionate punishment clause, and he should be let out.
Mike, let me pursue this a little bit with the Illinois Parole Board. Who's on that? Who makes it up? How are they appointed to that? And how did the progressives on the board, and there were obviously 6 more than the one that's on there now, how did they get on there, and how did they get kicked off?
Well, the Illinois legislature and Republicans on the Illinois legislature made a challenge that says that the Prisoner Review Board was not fair, and they forced out all the progressive. They didn't reinstate all the progressive people on the board. 6 people were taken off the board, all the people that had voted for Ronnie in the past. And therefore, the parole board right now, and the ultimate decision to who goes on the parole board is by the governor, Pritzker. But Pritzker gave in to the Republicans in the state legislature and didn't fight them, pushing all these progressive people out of the board. And it just happened. It happened over the last year. And it shows, because Ronnie was getting 7 votes, and now he gets 1 vote. And all the people that voted for him in the past are gone.
And your court appearance this week, today, actually, when we're recording, how did that go?
I think it went well, but you never know with these judges, Actually, Federica Lyle, do you remember her? Black woman, alderman, past alderman. Yeah. She's a judge now, and she was on the panel. She seemed pretty good, but you don't know about the other 2 judges, you don't know what they're thinking. And so we just got to wait and see. But, all my cases, and I've had a lot of injustice cases. This is one of the highest injustice I can't believe. The guy is totally rehabilitated. He's, 18 years old. He went in, he was a baseball star, and they won't give him up.
I was at a Democratic Party 49th Ward fundraiser recently, and all these people running for judge showed up, from all over the city. And I'm kind of amazed at how careerist some of these people seem. And, my first question to some of them who were looking to, they were introducing themselves. I said, were you involved in any progressive organizations when you were in high school? I didn't get any real good answers. But, I didn't know a lot about this Ronnie Castillo, and I will certainly be asking a few questions about it.
Yes, you should. Yeah, actually, we had a great turnout. The courtroom was filled with people of his supporters, all these people that have supported him over the years came, and literally the whole courtroom was filled with his supporters. Emma Lozano was there and some other people. She's been supporting him all these years. So yeah, it's an important case because it shows how arbitrary now the prisoner review board is. They call it the parole board.
I'm a little surprised that, I mean, I got to admit, I was never a fan of Pritzker, but as a governor, I've been pretty appreciative of a lot of stuff he's done.
Yeah,
And,
he's done some,
I'd
he's
like
done
to
some
see
good stuff.
we have some time left. I would like to ask you about the International People's Tribunal on U.S. imperialism.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what that's all about, Mike.
Okay. Some group of progressive lawyers, some from the National Lawyers Guild, some from the International Association of Democratic Lawyers, which is an international group of progressive lawyers, formed this idea to create a tribunal that would look into the effects of U.S. imperialism around the world, particularly as to sanctions and coercive economic measures that the U.S. is imposing against these countries across the world. And the way it was set up and the way it is set up is that they would have Zoom hearings at these different these different venues where these countries were, and experts from the country would testify at the hearings, and we would ask questions as jurors. And then ultimately is going to be a report about all these different countries and how they're suffering under U.S. sanctions or other coercive measures. And there's going to be a report, and maybe there's going to be a book that comes out, and maybe some lawsuits about what's going on illegally under international law.
What are some of the countries that are being looked at?
Okay. Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, Zimbabwe, Eritrea, Iran, Iraq. Those are some. Palestine.
So this is basically about it's about countries that have been affected by U.S. imperialism.
Exactly.
And actually, the title is the International People's Tribunal on U.S. Imperialism, Sanctions and Economic Coercive Measures.
Right.
And well, we know that. I saw today in a paper that the European Union, I believe, got a little heavier on Cuba. It's amazing to me that, well, certainly in the case of Cuba, and that they've been treated so roughly by everyone under the influence of the United States. Let me ask you, how did this International People's Tribunal on U.S. imperialism, et cetera, come to be? I mean, who created it?
I think these activists from the Guild and the International Association of Democratic Lawyers, who have chapters all across the world, decided they were going to do these hearings and hopefully focus attention on the sanctions that have been imposed against all these different countries by the U.S. Some of them are totally illegal because they also sanction medical medicines, which are supposed to be excluded from any kind of sanctions. And in fact, Iran has all these medical problems, and they're not able to get medications for the medical problems because of the U.S. sanctions. So this was an effort to bring attention to sanctions around the world. And these progressive lawyers were involved in organizing it. And then they reached out to other people and got them involved. And there's lawyers from the NCBL and lawyers from Haiti and lawyers from France that are all involved in this activity.
How much time does it take, Mike, and how often do you watch some of these hearings?
Well, it started in the end of May, and we've been doing them like once or twice a month, maybe 3 times a month, and they're usually run for 2 to 3 hours. And you don't have to, if you're one of the jurors, you don't have to be on each one. There are different jurors, and different ones sign up to be on the different tribunals.
The International People's Tribunal on U.S. imperialism, sanctions, and economic coercive measures, has it gotten any press? have
It's got some press, particularly international press, and some press, but this, what we're trying to do is when the actual results come out, the determinations by the jurors as to what these, violations are, they're going to be a report on each country. And I think then we'll focus more on the press. And like I said, we're thinking about maybe bringing some lawsuits against the U.S. for some of these sanctions, which violate international law.
Mike, in our closing minutes of this segment of Live from the Heartland for the week of July 22nd, I'd like to ask you, as a longtime progressive lawyer, a very good citizen, your recommendations to younger people or people who have yet to be involved or just becoming involved on things that they should do or think about or be aware of. How to be a good citizen, good organizer, a good progressive member of the community.
Well, first thing I would say is do not get discouraged. Do not get the things look kind of bleak, and there's a lot of uncertainty about the progressive movement and what the U.S. is doing all over the world. But keep fighting. That's the most important thing, and work with your people that you know and are involved, and keep organizing them to speak out and branch out and organize as many people as you can. This is hard times, but we shouldn't give up.
Yeah, well, you got any, is there any signs of optimism out there for you?
Well, I see a lot of young people that are kind of committed to social justice. I do. But of course, we're going to need everybody on board. So I'm hoping that, we'll be able to organize more people over time and get people involved.
How do you like your new mayor up there in Evanston and the new mayor in Chicago?
Well, I like the new mayor in Chicago, and I'm hoping he'll be successful, but he's got a very difficult job, and a lot of people are waiting for him to fail. The new mayor in Evanston hasn't really shown me anything really progressive. I know he's supposed to be progressive, but I haven't really seen anything coming from the office of the mayor in Evanston.
And let me ask you, as we close out, what is your workout regimen? I see you on the weight machines at the McGaw YMCA. I see you on the bicycle, the treadmill. How long you been working out?
Oh, I've been working out for the last few years. The Evanston Y is a great place. You use it as well, and it's really close to my house. And I do 20 minutes on the bike, 10 minutes on the treadmill, 10 minutes on the elliptical, and then I do the machines. And so that's about an hour workout. Every morning I do that.
I attest to you do it. I watch you. I go in the pool first thing every morning.
Yeah, I know.
Certain days I come up and do my weights.
Right. It's great to see you up there.
Michael Deutsch, you're a wonderful guy. You've been doing a lot of good for the people, and you're still doing it. I hope things come through on the Ronnie Carrasquillo case, on the Abraham Parlak case, and I certainly hope that the International People's Tribunal on U.S. imperialism, sanctions, and economic coercive measures really turns in some good reports that get some real attention.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'll see you at the Y.
Okay, good.